Oh, we are back with another edition of the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast. We are your host. He is the Stallion. I am the Enforcer. And today we have a very special guest on the show. And Joe, I want to warn you, chances are he doesn't like us. Please welcome Josh Briggs to the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast. Josh, we appreciate you stopping by, man.
Thank you guys for having me. It's pretty cool to come and talk to you guys. So I appreciate the introduction, letting everyone know that I do not like them.
Dude, it's possibly my favorite introduction. I used to love the Limitless Keith Lee, but this is definitely taken over. Chances are he doesn't like you. I heard it first at Beyond Wrestling. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it was my first promo live in front of a crowd, and for some reason I just ended it with a challenge, and for some reason I thought it'd be cool to say something along the line. There's a good chance that I don't like you, and it got a decent enough reaction to stick with me for a little bit. And then I thought it was a catchy shirt, and the shirt has basically floated my my rent for me and supported my my family and everything. So that all stuck. And then I never really wanted a nickname or anything of the sort. I always thought it'd be really cool to announce her last name as loud as possible. But you kind of have to adapt with the times. Now everyone has some type of moniker. So Rich Palladino, he's the local ring announcer, probably the best guy to have ever introduced me. He came up with the idea. He liked the slogan enough, and he shot it by me and asked if he could try it out. And sure enough, I mean, it took off, and that's kind of like what I'm known for more than mostly anything, is that I just don't like people, you know?
Well, it works, and the crowd, especially the Beyond crowd, which is speaking freely, that's where I first saw you. When I heard that, I was like, man, that's something that's going to catch on. And then, sure enough, I saw you had the T-shirt for it. So, kudos to you. Listen, you have a definitely a decorated football background, a D1 football career, and I want to touch on that. But growing up, were you always a professional wrestling fan?
Yeah. So when I don't know the exact age because my memory is just god awful, but when it had to be like my 5th or 6th birthday. There's some pictures floating around the internet, but I got these wrestling action figures. They were WW, and I was just really infatuated by them. And I think I asked my mom if figures correlated to it, and I saw Goldberg and the Jericho, and I was just like really infatuated with all the athleticism. And I was really small growing up, believe it or not, and I kind of just wanted to emulate these guys. And so I guess like around my 5th birthday or so, I became a wrestling fan, and it never really changed.
I appreciate how you said you found WCW cards and action figures and it wasn't WWE. So that's going to lead me to my next question. Were you more of a WCW guy or a WWF guy?
So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I a Jericho guy more than I also jumped ship, and then I kind of realized like on, but I really just enjoyed WWE a lot more than WCW once I got a WWF product.
That's fair. And I think at that time, I mean, both companies were kind of so hot you could pick and choose. And who knows with what's going on in, professional wrestling today, we might be getting back to that sooner rather than later. But listen, before we go any further, there's one thing that drives a wedge between myself and Joe, that drives a wedge deep between the bond that is the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast. And that is the question, whose side are you on all time, one or the other, Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels? We got to hear your opinion.
Oh, man. And like my trainer, Brian Fury, hates me for it, but I'm a Shawn Michaels guy. I never liked Bret, man.
I got to tell you, listen, we've done probably maybe 30 to 40 interviews, and I am Team Bret Hart. 3 people have been on my side, and it was, I think, me, Dan Barry, and Solo Darling. Everybody else said Shawn Michaels, and I feel so, I don't know, there's something about Bret that, connected to me as a kid, but it's okay. Everybody's allowed to have their opinions. So
yeah, man. I mean, I'm 25 years old, so like the Bret Hart passed me by, and I never really got to experience it full force. And I got a little bit more of Shawn Michaels, and like even going back now, Bret Hart's just not really my cup of tea. And I mean, like, Shawn's not, to me, the best wrestler of all time by any means, but to me, he clicks a little bit more with me, and I can pick a little bit more from what Shawn does and how he puts together matches and gets the crowd involved and everything. So I guess Shawn just sits a little closer to my heart.
that's all right. We're not going to knock you for it, but it's another one on Team Joe. That's all. Listen, back to your college career. Correct me if I'm wrong. You played D1 at UMass, offensive lineman. Is that true?
Yeah, man. UMass Amherst. I graduated in 15. I was starting right guard and then moved to starting center my last years. Yeah, it was a good enough time as far as playing college football goes. It's not the most fun. It's probably the most grueling job you can do, and you ain't making any money for it. So it's pretty tough. But I did my time, got in and got out, and had a lot of good fun. Got to see the world. Got to do some of the coolest things possible. And I mean, I contribute football to making me as athletic as I am, and as tough as I am, and as coachable as I am. So football did a lot for me.
Was the NFL ever a choice for you, and then you decided to go professional wrestling, or did you just think there was a brighter future in pro wrestling at that point?
So long story short, and to be completely honest, my junior year, I was having a really good season, and I was playing center. I tore all the ligaments and tendons in my right pinky, and I'm a right-hander, so I couldn't snap as a center. That happened 3 games. I had 3 games left in that season, so it kind of just like threw the NFL down the toilet for me. And I mean, that season, like the Redskins and the Rams and a couple other places looked at me, but I mean, even if I stayed healthy, I wasn't big enough to have ever gotten drafted. I was maybe 310, and I mean, for an NFL pro style team, that's not that big. Best case scenario is I think I might have gotten a free agency deal and gotten cut in training camp. I was more of a technique guy and a knowledgeable guy than a power type of guy, and that's really, if you're coachable and really strong and big, I think that goes a lot. You can last a lot longer in the NFL that way. So, after that junior season, I kind of gave up on football in a sense. I still played my senior year. I still started and everything, but mentally I was checked out, and I knew that I wanted to wrestle. That was kind of what I always wanted to do. And I'm from Arizona originally, so I mean, there ain't much wrestling out in Arizona or anywhere around it besides California. So once I moved out to Mass is kind of the hub of pro wrestling in America. And I found the New England Pro Wrestling Academy and Brian Fury, my trainer. And the second that I graduated and finished up with my football career, it was all wrestling, didn't care about anything, didn't do my pro day at my school, didn't answer calls from any NFL teams. I was done with football, man.
I mean, I guess once you make that commitment, that's where your mind's going. You said you were from Arizona, moved to Massachusetts. So you a Cardinals fan or you a Patriots fan, out of curiosity?
This is another weird type of question. After I graduated and stopped with football, I don't watch football anymore. My whole experience on football kind of soured me. If I had to pick a team, it would be the Vikings because I've always been partial to them. My family is from Minnesota. I'm of Norwegian descent. So, Yeah, I'm kind of I've always been a Vikings fan. I just fell out of love with football. I'm kind of more into hockey now than anything, and I'm a big fan of the Bruins. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, if we're doing battle again, then we're big Ranger fans here in Long Island, but it's okay.
Oh, all right. I mean, I hear you. I hear you.
So you said you started wrestling right out of in 2015. Now, if you've only been wrestling less than 3 years, is that fair to say? About 2.5 years?
Yeah, less than 3 years. So I graduated early in 2015 from UMass. I graduated in December.
So in that span, I'm sure people go to the cage match and they see where you've wrestled and whatnot. Look at your matches. You have been you wrestle for Evolve. You wrestle for Beyond Wrestling. You did the Future of Honor for Ring of Honor. What do you attribute? Such an enormous amount of growth in that 2.5 years. You think that's attributed to your athletic background, playing D1, understanding the competitive nature and understanding how to train? Because that for you to be able to do that in 2.5 years, it's amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I attribute it to, and I don't really want to put myself over or anything like that. I do work really hard, but
Dude, but listen, take credit where credit is due, man. Absolutely.
What I really think, what really kicked it off for me was I was a really big guy in a world where there's not that many big dudes going. Brian Fury is, you have to look him up. He trained Sasha Banks, Biff Busick, Tommaso Ciampa, and trainer Brian Fury. If no down in England, Massachusetts, Northeast area, Brian Fury had a hand in making completely, and I think went a lot longer than pretty much anything for me was having Brian Fury put the stamp of approval on me, and being in his lineage. And then once I had those opportunities, I kind of capitalized on it. I can remember the first 2 times where my career really jumped to the next level was I was really wrestling at places where I wasn't making much money and no one was really in the crowd. And then at Limitless Wrestling in Maine, I had a match with Donovan Dijak. And to me, Donovan Dijak, I've done a million interviews, and every single one I've put him over as one of the best wrestlers on the planet. And he is Dominic Dijakovic. Sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth between his names. That's kind of how I know him as. But Dijak really. Me and him we went balls to the New Year's Eve 2017. Me and Keith Lee had another one of those matches where it kind of just put everyone on notice. Keith is another one of those guys who's one of the best on the planet. And after that, I kind of just would get the ball in my court and I'd have to capitalize. And luckily enough, I've kind of capitalized on everything,
Well, those were great matches. To me, the one that stuck out this year was you and the Luchasaurus at Beyond Wrestling. It's Alive. If you haven't seen it yet, that match is to be as big as you are and as athletic as you are, and to be able to wrestle that pace in such a sprint of a match. How did you develop your style, and is there anybody that you patterned it after?
That's another man. I kind of just take I just take bits and pieces of everyone that I like and just throw them all into my type of stew, and I just really go and do what I do. But as far as cardio, to keep up that type of pace, I've never really gotten blown up in a match, and I've done some long ones, and I've done some quick, fast ones. And that's really just the work that Brian Fury makes us do at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, and my training at the gym and everything, and how well I eat and everything like that. But as far as my style, I really took a lot from Bruiser Brody. I think he's the man. Like it's just a crying shame that he's not involved in wrestling. You know, like I think that what happened is so tragic, and like listening to all the people who knew him so well talk about him, like if he was in pro wrestling today still, I think pro wrestling as a whole would be completely different. So Brody was a big one for me when I was like learning how to perform early on. Barry Windham was another one, a fast, big dude, in great shape and just a great baby face. Dijak, of course. Was my idol for so long, and a couple other people, but I've kind of working with Gabe at Evolve has really transformed me into a guy doing moves, into a guy who is doing things for a reason, if that makes sense. That's such a old school grizzled vet type of thing to say, is you don't need to do the moves, you just do things for a purpose and get the most out of it. But it doesn't really click with you until you kind of really realize it in front of a crowd. And Gabe was, I think, that guy who transformed me, and I mean made me work more of a TV style than a independent, pop the boys type of wrestling, and that's kind of where my wrestling has evolved to in the last couple of months. No pun intended with evolve, but yeah, that's kind of how my style's progressed.
To tell more of a story, like you're saying, and have the everything in the match mean something. I think that's great, and I think you could absolutely see it in your matches. And speaking of Gabe, speaking of Evolve, I know you've had some big matches in your career, like you said, Donovan Dijak, Keith Lee. Evolve 119 next weekend. It's you and Austin Theory versus Johnny Gargano and AR Fox in an Icons versus the New Generation match. Is this match the biggest match in your career?
Honestly, yeah, I think it's the biggest match in my career. And I'm saying that because it'll probably bring the most new fans to me. And I think that is probably the biggest thing, the most important thing when you're building your brand and trying to climb the ladder of pro wrestling, is getting new fans, new exposure, and introducing new people to who you are. So in that sense, yeah, it's the biggest, most important match of my career. Um, the very good thing is that I've had a lot of tag team matches now. If this was last year, it'd probably be a little rougher for me and I'd be a little bit more nervous, but I've had a lot of tag team matches, a lot of multi-man stuff. And me and Fox have had so many good matches together, and we just have that undeniable type of chemistry where we can do some of the craziest stuff you'll ever see. And it's probably the most important, biggest match of my career, but it's also one of the matches that I'm not really too nervous about. I'm really excited to get it, to do it, to perform, and to get it over with, more than anxious and nervous, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're ready to go out there and enjoy yourself. When you look at the four guys in that match, I don't think I've ever seen a bad match from anybody. So I am myself, I'm looking forward to that. And the next night, if you go to the WWN website, they have you versus Angelo Dawkins in what they're calling an ultimate Haas fight. What can we expect, and are you going to break the ring?
Oh man, every time it's a Haas fight, that's like my number one goal, is to just destroy the ring. And so yeah, I'm really gonna try my best to do it. But I mean, Dawkins is a beast, man. Like, people don't understand it. If you haven't seen Dawkins, buy Club WWN, get that WWN subscription, and you need to watch his matches. Watch him on WWE Network. You need to see how strong he is. He's just like a real life bad dude who can throw you around, and that's
he
something
moves fast too. He's a big dude, like you said, but he moves fast.
He's a freak. He's been with the WWE for as long as he has for a good reason. He is a beast, and I've never really wrestled a dude like that where he's so legit and such a bad dude. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. He can go. I don't see this one letting up at all. We're gonna destroy each other and try and just steal the show.
Now, you spoke about Gabe and, how he's helped you. And you have, next weekend you have Evolve 119 and Evolve 120 back-to-back, and you have guys from NXT in both shows. Do you think it's any coincidence, and I know you don't like to put yourself over, but do you think it's any coincidence that you're in matches both nights with guys from NXT?
I've spoke to Gabe a lot about this, and, it's not a coincidence. You earn what you get when you work with Gabe. And I've always, and this is one thing that I can attribute to coming from football and having such a long football background, is I really try and be a good employee, and I really try and put the company first, and I've understood everything that he wants, and I try and get it done the best of my ability. Thankfully, I've capitalized, and when the ball is in my court, I've never dropped it, knock on wood. And I understand how important Evolve is to him, and hopefully he understands how important Evolve is to me. I would love to be the flag bearer of Evolve for the next 10 years, if that's possible. But like I said, everything is earned in Evolve. And there are a bunch of dudes who've been in there with NXT guys, and we have all earned it. I would wholeheartedly think that this is one of, if not the best Evolve rosters that we have, and that Evolve's ever had. Me, Darby, Theory, Drake, Henry. It's something that's worth more than $9.99 a month, and this isn't to put over the subscription Club WWN or anything, but it's really a shame if you aren't watching this every single Evolve weekend. It's the best thing that's going around right now, honestly.
And they do have plenty of content on there, so for $9.99, you're right, you do get your money's worth. Speaking of Evolve, you said right now it's probably, they've had big names, Evolve has, throughout, since they started, but they haven't had such a deep roster like they do right now. What do you think is the future of Evolve? The company seems to be growing exponentially, and they have a great working relationship with WWE and NXT. Do you see Evolve kind of maybe growing to a larger scale in this next year, or are they going to kind of just stick with what they're doing and keep pumping out consistent shows?
The future, it's always it goes with its ebbs and flows of pro wrestling, and right now, wrestling's in such a weird state where there's so much money being thrown around and so many people getting just signing these contracts and everything. And it's great for the boys and it's great for the products of pro wrestling, but I really think the future of Evolve is to build these shows. And every single show, if you look for the past 6-7 months, it's been a type of thing where the shows keep growing and they keep building, and I think that it's going to get to the point where there's going to be some stuff that people I don't think would expect. I don't want to say anything and jinx it, but everyone understands who our working relationship is with and where we're going, and I think the sky is the limit with Evolve.
They just announced. I know you said you don't want to, spoil anything, but they just announced Adam Cole is going to be wrestling in, I think, February in Joppa, Maryland. So the amount of talent, if the WWE didn't believe in Evolve, they wouldn't be sending these huge names on these shows to wrestle, phenomenal performers like yourself and Darby, Chris Dickinson, all these guys. Now, they're bringing people to Evolve. Who do you yourself, who do you want to come to Evolve, and who do you want to wrestle from NXT in the future?
Man, that's such a great question. Like, so many of my buddies are in Evolve, and I'd love to have them back and have a match. Like, Dijak, I had matches with Dijak when I was just so not good, Like, I've evolved so much. So if I could get Dijak back, that would be like a big one for me. Oni Lorcan, who, was Biff Busick, like, just another guy who I've never got to wrestle, who I still watch to this day, who's just so good.
Biff is great. He's so underrated. I love watching that dude wrestle.
He's the best. I mean, like, me being a Beyond guy, Beyond is my home, and Biff built Beyond. Biff and Dijak built Beyond, and I want to do what they did for Beyond Wrestling for forever. So, like, they're both so special to me and so special to the Beyond family, and like, that's a big thing that, like, I'd love to have both of them. And Biff's partner, Danny Burch, who's Martin Stone on the Indies. I mean, me and Martin have had we've only had one match, and it was at Beyond Wrestling, but I mean, that was up there for one of my favorite matches I've ever had. And he's another guy that doesn't get enough credit for his singles stuff. And man, he's a bad dude. And, I mean, realistically, that NXT roster is insane. I'd love to wrestle anyone. I'd love to get Riddle back, and wrestle him again, Keith again. So many of the guys who came from Beyond and from Evolve, that would be so special to get the Evolve guys back at Evolve.
Well, with WrestleMania weekend coming up and it being right in everybody's backyard here in New York, I think you might see a lot of interesting matchups that weekend for Evolve and for NXT. So we can all keep our fingers crossed. Other big news this week before we let you go: AEW, All Elite Wrestling, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes venture into the professional wrestling organization, I guess, business. What is your take on that? And as somebody who's, you can kind of work wherever you want to work right now, is that something that you kind of look at? And of course, you're with Evolve, and they have that relationship with the WWE and with NXT. But seeing AEW and seeing how it's offering, is such a different product. And I mean, I love professional wrestling and I love wrestling fans, but some of them on the internet are just like the worst, where it's like, you have to be this or you have to be this. You can't be in between. I think right now it's probably one of the greatest times ever to be a fan, and especially a professional wrestler like yourself, because there's so many options and there's so many ways to make money.
Yeah, man, wrestling is so cool right now. It's a shame that for some reason a lot of wrestling fans think that there's a war between companies, and you can't like Brian Cage if you like Kenny Omega, or if you like Seth Rollins. You can like anyone. The world is your oyster. You can watch as much wrestling as you physically can until you die. No one will hate you for it, So just enjoy wrestling. That is, if you can take one thing away from this conversation, it is just watch wrestling, watch good wrestling, watch bad wrestling, watch women's wrestling, watch deathmatch wrestling, watch tag team wrestling, watch all of it, and support all these wrestlers who are killing themselves just to make everyone happy. But I mean, back to AEW, dude, it's cool. Like, it is like, I can't think of another word for it other than just cool. I mean, my one of my best friends in the world, Max, MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, he signed a contract with them, and I've known for a little while, and I've been very, very happy for him. And it's awesome. Cody Rhodes is a dude. I mean, I don't really know him from a hole in the wall, but what he's done for professional wrestling is very admirable. And I mean, when he first started his independent career, it was one of the just such an admirable thing. I mean, he was on shows where he didn't have to go balls to the wall, but he did and put the dudes over that he didn't have to put over. And I will respect Cody to the day I die just for that. But I mean, I saw that they're, two of the coolest things about AEW, they're paying women properly and they're paying them equal to the men, which I mean is such a big step in not just pro wrestling, but the world as a whole. Um, and I mean, I hope that like what they're doing takes effect in not just pro wrestling, but the world, like their tagline is they're going to change the world. And like some people are saying that's BS because, it's wrestling. How can you change the world? But there are things that are definitely going to leave a lasting effect on culture. And I think that's one of them. And another really cool thing that, I mean, if not the coolest thing, is that anyone who's under contract with them or performs in their rings and they get injured, they will cover all of their medical expenses. And to me, as an independent wrestler, that is, and I'm speaking for every independent wrestler out there, that is just the best, like to have that just stability and to be just so confident that if something bad happens, you will be taken care of, man. Like that alleviates so much stress and so much pressure off of like any independent wrestler's mind. And I respect them for doing that. And like that's such a special thing that they're doing. And like what those guys at AEW are doing, it's really cool. I'm on the opposite side of the fence, and I haven't really talked to any of them. I don't really know any of them other than Max. So, I mean, it's two different sides of the fence for me, but I'm very happy that they're in professional wrestling doing something so positive for professional wrestling as a whole. And I hope that more people in pro wrestling take heed of what they're doing and kind of it lights a fire under a bunch of people, and they also want to get on board with what they're doing. It's awesome.
The other thing I saw that, of course, what you mentioned about the equal pay is great, and the healthcare, especially. I mean, especially for you guys and your families, that's amazing. And as far as the fans go, the one thing that Cody had just said was that wins and losses are going to matter now more than ever before. So for being, I mean, I'm 31, 32 years old, but I love like the old NWA and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of like such an old school mentality. I think that's been missing a lot lately. So I think what they're doing there, it's going to be great. And like you said, if you're a professional wrestling fan and you have the internet, man, you can watch 400 different promotions in an hour. There's so much wrestling out there. There's no reason to be negative about it. Everybody should just be happy, enjoy what you want to enjoy. Don't fight with people. Just be happy, be cool, and appreciate everything that we're being given right now as fans.
Yeah, man. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, like I said, I'm from Arizona, and like I didn't know anyone that liked wrestling. And I mean, if I'd go to school and I'd talk about wrestling, dude, I'd get made fun of. And like I understand how it is to be a pro wrestling fan. So, we should, as a unit, as a pro wrestling community, we need to like be nicer to each other. You don't need to be mean to people. You don't need to be mean to people ever in real life, except for me, because I don't like people. But like, just enjoy wrestling, man. It's an art, and we're trying to make people happy. And you don't need to hate someone because they're wrestling for a different company. You don't need to hate someone because they're a fan of something different. Just accept that we're all in love with the same thing.
Just exactly appreciate what we have, but always remember, chances are he doesn't like you. Josh, listen, where can everybody see you, talk to you, interact with you, find out what kind of shows you'll be coming up on soon? Where can they find you on social media?
My social media is at the Josh Briggs on Instagram and Twitter. You just go crazy, follow me up. I usually post graphics of what I got going on and monthly graphics and updates and all that stuff. And I tweet out some very negative things about what I dislike in wrestling. So it's very fun to follow me, I think. You can watch me on Club WWN, $9.99 a month. Support that as much as you can. You can also watch me on Beyond Wrestling's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond Wrestling. Support those two things more than anything else, and like just watch some good wrestling, and hopefully I fall under that good wrestling category.
Absolutely. And where can we pick up those shirts you were talking about earlier?
Oh, I mean, just hit me up on any type of social media, whatamaneuver.com/Josh Briggs, or go to a show and support all of wrestling, and then come talk to me at my merchandise table, and I can tell you I don't like you, and I can offer you a nice shirt. You know, that's probably the best. That's the best option. Everyone wins. You get to watch live wrestling, get a shirt, and I can tell you I hate you.
And be berated. Well, we're looking forward to it next weekend. Evolve 119, Evolve 120. Like you said, Club WWN app. Be sure to check it out. Josh, we thank you for stopping by the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast, my friend, and best of luck next weekend.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it, man. Take care.
You too, dude.
Bye.
How'd that come out?
There was a part in the beginning where you or I sounded like a pterodactyl, but right after that, it was fine.
All right.
So thanks, dude. We appreciate it, man. And again, I appreciate you, at the gym late night, you stopping by and talking to us, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, dude. Don't worry about it. It's always fun talking and shooting the shit about wrestling and whatnot. So I enjoyed it. And
awesome. And we hope to catch up with you next weekend, then.
Yeah, man. Perfect. I'll see you then.
All right. Take care. Have a good night.
Okay, man. You too.
All right. Later.